Hello, Leo K here. Hope you're doing okay. I've taken a long break from the Assassin's Creed franchise for the sake of my own sanity, but I'm back now because when I left I still had topics I wanted to cover. Then I completely burned out on the series after Valhalla, all the news about Ubisoft, and various other things. After giving it some time, I think working on videos for Assassin's Creed can finally be enjoyable for me again, so let's take it slow and give it a shot. If I like it, I'll do more. If it's still too much for me, I'll extend my break a bit longer. This is my personal ranking for every usable active in Assassin's Creed Unity. An active is anything that's equipped or used from your tool selector, so things like bombs, projectiles, and even the co-op skills like heal or disguise. I'm going to rank every item and ability on this list by taking its value into account, but before I do that, what is value? In AC Unity, value can be broken down into three categories, which are the item's versatility, power, and cost. All of those things considered together are roughly how good that item is. The big two are its versatility and power, with its cost being a less important factor, but it's still a consideration, especially in the early game when players starting a new save don't have much money. An item's versatility is how many different situations it's useful in. Typically, an item that you have a reason to use in many different scenarios is much stronger than an item that's extremely situational or only has one or two decent places to use it in. Versatility is valued the most, with power a very close second. An item's power is its actual strength and immediate usefulness, but it's also how reliable it is, and how easy it is for you to take advantage of it. Usually items that are difficult to apply correctly or that are too slow to have their beneficial effects unfold will be lower ranked than items that are useful right away and help you a lot with minimal effort. And finally, an item's cost is everything that you're willingly losing in order to use that item well. Every item and ability in this game technically costs something. There are cases when an item is cheap or even free, but you're still paying an opportunity cost in time that you could have taken to use another item instead. This category is a combination of how much money it takes to refill it at a shop, whether it costs you sync points to unlock that you could be using to get something else, and again, how much time it takes for you to use it effectively in the moment. I really need to stress how important speed and therefore time is in AC Unity. This game has a very high guard density in some areas, and that means that unlike some stealth games, the longer you stay in one spot, the worse your situation becomes. Items that take a long time to use can be actively harmful to the most effective playstyle, which is usually stealth. Taking all of these factors into consideration is what I use to determine an item or ability's overall rating on the tier list, but it's important to understand that this doesn't take subjectivity or style into account. For example, I really think rifles are a cool and stylish weapon. They're one of my personal favorites, but they're quite low on the list because of their direct weaknesses compared to pistols. Something you should be asking is, why do I care about this? In a single-player game, what's the use in understanding how effective or valuable different items are? That's a really good question, and there are a few core answers to it. I'll wrap back around to this later, but one important thing to keep in mind from the beginning is that doing better at a game is a lot more fun than doing badly. That said, if you don't care about what's strong or weak in AC Unity, you do you, no hard feelings. Now, onto the reasons. First, before anything else, I'll mention that Unity is not entirely a single-player game, and it actually has at least two multiplayer components, one cooperative and one competitive. Unity has co-op gameplay, wherein you and 3 other players can team up to do missions together. In any kind of cooperative game, playing effectively doesn't just affect you, it's a courtesy that can improve the experience of other players around you. Whether this is something you care about is up to you, especially since getting co-op sessions up is harder than ever nowadays, but it still stands. Second, Unity features Helix Rifts, which are essentially timed score attack maps, in which a player attempts to get the highest score possible before the simulation collapses. Points are scored via good use of parkour, as well as efficient, repeated guard kills. These compare your scores to those of other players, which represents the only type of formalized competition AC Unity actually has. Optimizing your gameplay then has at least some reason to be done, simply because these Helix Rifts exist, and because other players might be playing co-op with you, and you would both be having a better experience together if you were both playing somewhat well. Again, whether you care about this or not is up to you, but that's subjective and individual to each player. What's not subjective is that if you're looking for reasons effective gameplay matters, those reasons do exist. Third, Unity is one of the most challenging games in the Assassin's Creed series, and death comes quickly if you start making mistakes that you don't recover from properly. Because of this, many newcomers and even players who've been playing for a while struggle to progress efficiently and often find themselves desynchronizing or playing too slowly in the pursuit of avoiding deaths, which only makes things worse. This is intensified by trying to finish full sync requirements, which is even harder to do than to play the game normally. Fourth and final is that playing well is more fun than playing poorly, and understanding item values is a strong part of that. Unity is one of the most replayed games in the series, with people sometimes grinding the same mission dozens of times to get a run that looks expressive, fluid, and cool. Even if you just do this for yourself, it's worth learning to play better. Effectively, what all this means is that Unity has a meta, even if you disregard the multiplayer elements entirely. An array of effective strategies and mindsets has been developed alongside the game by its player base. If you're rolling your eyes at that, you don't understand the term's practical meaning. I don't have time here to argue with you about Greek etymology, but for the general meaning of what a meta is in the context of video games, feel free to look at it as an acronym for most effective tactics available. While this is a gaming-specific explanation rather than the original term, it's helpful to unaware players for getting a good idea quickly of what it actually means. If a game has win states, and that game also has loss states, then there are necessarily more effective and less effective ways to play it. This means that game has a meta, especially if a dedicated enough player base has spread the requisite knowledge. In Unity's case, that knowledge has been spread. Single-player games aren't universally an exception to this. They can have metas. In fact, there is certainly at least one single-player game for which you've seen and been impressed by remarkable gameplay videos. The content creators who make those impressive videos are able to do so because they have a better understanding of that game than the average person. All of this is to say that there are better and worse ways to play AC Unity, and the items that you use have a massive bearing on your effectiveness. We begin with D tier, for actives that are too situational and rigid. If an item is here, it's either because it takes too long to use, because its category is in conflict with its function, because it has an unlock cost that is better spent elsewhere, or because it's only useful in one or two situations. Simply put, you usually want to use something else over it. Communal Sense is the worst usable skill in the game, unless you're playing co-op, in which case it becomes almost mandatory for one player on the team to be running it. When a player who is running Communal Sense uses their Eagle Vision, all other players on their team get the affected guards revealed to them through walls as well, without having to use their own. This makes communication very easy, especially since you can put a player tag on a guard through walls once you've pinged them with Eagle Vision. The problems with Communal Sense are threefold. It does nothing for you personally, it doesn't have any kind of material effect on the world, and it consumes your skill slot. This means that if you're playing in single player, which will be 90% of your time in Unity, Communal Sense is completely useless, since it literally does nothing. When you're playing alone, you gain no benefit from equipping this, and you're losing the ability to run Heal or Disguise, which are stronger actives that are useful in any situation. Assassin Cache seems like a great idea on paper. When you're low on consumables, Assassin Cache will refill them. There are a few issues with this though. Firstly, Assassin Cache doesn't discriminate between items you have unlocked and items you don't. That means that if you're on a playthrough where you haven't unlocked Money Pouch, Poison Bombs, or Stun Bombs, Assassin Cache still has a chance to give you refills of those items, even though you can't even select them because you haven't unlocked them yet. Secondly, and this is made worse by the first problem, Assassin Cache costs time. Way more time than most other items and skills. You have to stand still inside of it in order to get its full effect, and the items it gives are completely random. As you may remember, I said it has a chance to give refills of items. You'll never know what you get from it, and that kind of unpredictability is typically bad when you can just avoid it. In theory, you can use Assassin Cache when you're standing still behind cover, waiting for guards to get out of your way, but if you're playing very well, you will have very few moments of standing still, and even fewer moments of standing still for more than a second or two, since Unity favors a speed-heavy, stealth-heavy meta. Assassin Cache also costs sync points to unlock, so it's not worth it. Money Pouch throws a bag of coins at the ground, and nearby civilians will swarm toward it, creating a blend spot for you. You can assassinate guards while blended, and as long as others aren't stepping inside of the small area around you marked by your blend circle, you'll be completely invisible. Money Pouch is cumbersome to select, being on the far side of the bombs portion of your item selector, which means you'll either have to tap right D-pad a lot, or reach for a number on your keyboard you're not gonna like pressing, as opposed to the tight, cozy 1 to 4 that lets you select your smoke and projectiles. For a game that prides itself on melting your console or PC by rendering ungodly amounts of civilians, when you play AC Unity, you might notice something weird. There's not a lot of those civilians in main missions, and not too many in side content either, although there are a bit more there. This is because most main missions in Unity take place in restricted areas, and in order for the game to maintain some narrative integrity, civilians tend not to wander around them, with some exceptions. What this means is that Money Pouch falls victim to not only its lack of speed, but its lack of versatility. Even if it's useful at its one intended purpose, and sometimes it really can be, don't get me wrong, the amount of opportunities you'll have to use it well are rare. This item also costs sync points to unlock, so I would suggest you just skip it. The Blunderbuss is actually a favorite of mine, but it breaks my heart because of how bad its use cases are. It's a type of firearm, which is where the problems begin, but we'll touch on that later. It's under the rifles category, and it's basically a shotgun. Much like a shotgun, its intended use is as a close-range source of damage. This is actually good if you're fighting a group of enemies that are clumped up, like in a small courtyard, room, or tunnel. With a single pull of the trigger, you can damage or wipe out a big group immediately and keep on fighting. Wow, great value. Not quite. The situations you would use a blunderbuss in are very narrow in this game. To justify equipping it, you need to make sure you hit multiple guards at the same time, which automatically implies combat or clustered patrol groups, but smoke bombs are stealthier and more efficient than a gunshot from a blunderbuss, so a clustered patrol is out of the question. That really only leaves combat. While this is fine if you anticipate being detected a lot, that's still just one useful scenario. Now, consider what you sacrifice in order to equip it. It consumes your firearm slot. In Unity, pistols and rifles also go in the firearm slot, and they are the only reliable hard counter to gunners, which are one of the most annoying enemy types in the entire game. By equipping a blunderbuss, that means you're willing to discard an easy counter to gunners that are beginning to detect you. There is no scenario in which this is a winning move, which makes the blunderbuss essentially bad by default. Even if you use it in its best possible scenario, you still have to deal with the gunners somehow, otherwise they'll shoot down at you anyway while you're feeling cool blowing away 5 guys at once. I like this weapon, it's stylish, and if I'm running some kind of tank playstyle it can be fun, but it's definitely not very useful. Poison gas is finally probably the best in the D tier, and I even considered putting it higher. The reasons I didn't involve the speed of its effect and how much paperwork you gotta go through to make it usable. Firstly, poison can't be unlocked until far in the game, so its availability is abysmal. Next, as I just implied, it's an unlock required item, which means it costs sync points to make usable. With default gear, Arno can only carry 2 of them, which means to raise your ammo count with this item, you need to gear for it, which is more of a headache than running the meta build of legendary military bracers, a smoke bomb belt, and then whatever other gear you want. The item can actually damage both yourself and your allies, so it's usually best thrown far from where you, co-op teammates, or friendly AIs will be putting their bodies. Now, it can be good, and in fact it's not a bad idea to get this item if you don't have anything else that you want. Simply put, poison is the other hard counter to gunners. It will not do sufficient damage to make it worth it to most other types of guards in the game, but gunners have fixed health bars throughout the entire game, in any district, in any sequence, in any memory. One poison bomb will always kill whatever gunner it lands on if they don't move out of the cloud, and they usually won't do that until it's too late. This means you can make them cost-effective by throwing one at 2 gunners right next to each other, which is rare, but it does happen in certain memories. Poison bombs can sometimes be more useful than rifle or pistol gunshots since you can throw them a bit farther, which also raises their ranking far ahead of the other D tier items. Of all the other items and actives in their tier, poison bombs are the one that you should probably consider, and don't even worry about the others. The C tier houses items and actives that are decent. They're not bad at all, but there are usually better, easier, stronger things to use instead of them. If you want to use the things here for style or comfort, you won't suffer much, so it's okay to do that. Group healing is technically a co-op skill, but unlike Communal Sense, it's actually an active cooldown and it affects you personally, even if no one else is around. It's self-explanatory, and it can be great early and mid-game when you need to save money on medicine. It lets you heal yourself, it has no upfront cost except the sync points it takes to unlock it, and it can act as an extra medicine to use, especially to top up after taking minor damage. The bigger your health bar, the more medicine will cost you in shops, so group healing used in place of a medicine bottle can be smart sometimes. Group healing's disadvantages are that it consumes your skill slot and that it's only useful if you're making mistakes, whereas something else you could put there like Disguise is strong proactively rather than reactively. Next, to get the full benefits of its effect, you have to be playing in co-op and ideally healing a full party, so this is a great skill to run in the middle of a fight. For example, if you're pushing through a lot of guards while wearing heavy armor, your friends are fighting around you, they're all eating a lot of hits. Not only is this situational since you'll be playing single player most of the time, most players will go down in 3 or 4 hits anyway since they're not wearing heavy armor. So unless you're a Jedi and you have a party full of tanky knights, you won't have the brain and hand speed to look at your entire party and decide when to heal. It can be good if you're running some kind of meme playstyle as a team, all playing tanky and just doing combat, but group heal can be redundant in solo play since medicine already exists. You're consuming an item slot for the exact same function that medicine already does. Disguise is typically more useful in the skill slot. The guillotine gun is a new weapon type added by the Dead Kings DLC, which everyone who ever installs Unity gets for free, as part of Ubisoft's apology for how broken this game was at launch. It fires mortar bombs, which consume the firearm slot. It's basically a grenade launcher, and it can be used to wipe out groups of guards. For this function, it's actually pretty good, and in some ways better than the Blunderbuss, since you can stay high up on a roof and fire the explosive down onto a group in the street or a lower rooftop. It's slightly better against gunners too, since if you're above them, you can at least shoot down at them. You can hit yourself with the explosion though, so if you're using it in the middle of a close range fight, be careful quick-shotting it. The guillotine gun is alright, especially if you already like fighting with the axe blade on it. It's a very weird and unique weapon that can be used to solve specific problems, like big groups of guards holding a position, like you often see in the Franciat Underground, so it makes sense that it's part of the DLC. For normal gameplay, like back in Paris though, you're still losing the range and faster attack speeds of a rifle or pistol. Rifles are the best in C tier, mostly because they're more widely useful than group healing or the guillotine gun, but less effective than pistols. The reason for this is a bit silly, but we still have to respect it because that's how they program the game. Rifles have the exact same range as a pistol, but generally fire slower than them and carry smaller ammo counts. Why? I have no clue, but that's how they work. In theory, I would have designed rifles to have slightly longer range and higher ammo counts to make up for their slow fire rates compared to pistols, but as they are in the game, they're just pistols but worse. What makes rifles worse than pistols, other than their fire rate and smaller ammo counts, is that they consume your main weapon slot, which is a flaw they share with a guillotine gun. While they can be stylish and they are one of my favorite weapons, this means you're missing out on the quick kills that one-handed swords will give you, you're missing out on the Eagle of Sugera, which is the best weapon in the game, and you're missing out on easy group sweeps with spears which can knock down brutes. Still, at least they're cool, and I'll frequently run a rifle just because I enjoy fighting with it, and its cool slide shot animation. Ooh. Items and actives in B tier are good. They're something that effective players will use semi-regularly over the course of the game because their impact is undeniable. While they're not so amazing that avoiding them will hurt you badly, in situations where you're already doing okay, using these will help you do even better, faster. Items in B tier are here because they're either good in multiple situations, or if they're only good in one, that one use covers a specific weakness that a high tier item has, which makes them very strong add-ons to something that's already great. Medicine heals you instantly. It's essentially a potion. Much like group heal, medicine is only something you'll ever use if you make a mistake. But given that Unity isn't the most polished game in the world, bugs or weird interactions will happen every once in a while that cause you to take damage even if you were playing well. As such, the mistake in question might not always be your own, so it's worth keeping medicine on hand. The reason it's in a higher tier than group heal is that it doesn't consume your skill slot. Medicine goes in its own specialized slot and has no cooldown to its use. Instead, the penalty for healing with it is that you've used one up and it's gone now, and in the late game, that probably means you just lost a lot of money. A way to mitigate the intense money loss from rebuying medicine is to deliberately avoid getting every health upgrade. Just pick up the first 2 or 3. You still won't die too fast, but the Iron Skin upgrade is excessive and not needed. It'll only inflate medicine costs and make rebuying them a pain. Since medicine is a way to recover from mistakes, it lets you take risks, like longer falls, tougher fights, or more dangerous open sightlines that gunners can shoot you through. Medicine is the single best way to avoid desynchronizing to gunners that you've aggroed if you have at least enough health to absorb 1 or 2 gunshots, and then heal before the next one. Being able to take risks means you can move through missions faster, which is always a comfier way to play. Although, you can also just use a smoke bomb and prevent them from firing into the cloud, which is much easier. Disguise is the one active skill that has the highest value while playing solo. While it slows you down a bit, it allows you to become invisible by hacking the Animus to make Arno temporarily look like someone else, usually a guard. Unlike Communal Sense, it has a material effect playing alone. Unlike Assassin Cache, you can keep moving while you use it, and unlike Group Heal, it's proactive rather than reactive and doesn't share redundancy with Medicine. Disguise lets you approach single guards to stab them or choke them if no one else is looking, without having to disrupt the environment. It lets you move through open space past a group that would be difficult to smoothly take down, and it can be the solution to really difficult personal challenges that disallow the use of other tools and killing. The slowdown on it isn't great. You do have to walk while disguised, and running, attacking, or interacting with any enemy will immediately break you out of it, even if you just barely touched them or even got very close to their front. It's only this high on the list, not because it's incredible, but because any of the other skills that would take up its slot instead are so much worse by comparison, which means you lose nothing by running it. Stun grenades have to be unlocked. They're very situational and not versatile at all. Their effect time is very short, so while you can throw them from any distance, you have to actually be very close to the enemy before you throw one in order to properly use it. They can be expensive, so why are they in B tier? It's because they make absolutely zero sound. None whatsoever. Stun bombs are here because they cover the one weakness the smoke bomb has, its sound profile. Stun bombs are used in situations where you want to briefly, and I mean very briefly, disable a few guards, but you don't want other guards to know that you did it. This lets you bypass or kill the ones that you want, but the other ones will have no clue that anything has changed. Throwing smoke in these situations would disrupt the area once the guards see the bodies you left after being drawn to the smoke's noise, and then they'll all wander around looking for you. On its own, the stun bomb is nearly useless, and there are very few situations where you would want to throw one instead of a smoke bomb. But when you're in those situations, it is the best possible option you have. So this high on the list makes sense solely because it makes an already insane item even stronger by letting you avoid its bad scenarios. Probably the worst thing about the pistol is that once you unlock it, it's going to be on Arno's character model for the rest of the game. A lot of people don't like that. I wish we could toggle off its visual too, but as it stands, that's a negligible downside for something so useful. Pistols are just like rifles, they have the same attack range, and they can be used to instant kill enemies by shooting them in the head. Except the best ones can hold many shots at once, can fire very fast at enemies fighting you, and don't consume your main weapon slot, which means you can run the Eagle of Sugere or Sword of Eden alongside one. They have all the advantages of a rifle and none of its downsides. Pistol's attack range is the exact same as a gunner's vision range, which means they're your main way of countering gunners who are just starting to see you. If you're on a rooftop or far away from enemies, a gunner beginning to detect you can and should be quickly killed by immediately switching to your pistol and then shooting them as soon as you can, usually with a quick shot. Most of the time, the loud gunshot will not get you hurt or detected unless you're very close to other enemies. Pistols have inherent value because they're the best counter to the most annoying enemy type in the game, and on low upgrades playthroughs, the best counter to the most dangerous enemy type in the game, since gunners will start one-shotting you in the late game if you leave them alone. Pistols also let you god combo efficiently, since bullets cost less than Phantom Blades or Berserk Blades. Unfortunately, nothing is perfect, and pistols suffer from being loud and not dealing amazing body shot damage. Still, they're so helpful for removing a type of guard that's abysmal to play against that they're worth using just for that. You will be glad you have an easy way to kill gunners when you need to. Items in the A tier are great. They're items which, if you're refusing to use them, will hurt you badly, and one way to get way more comfortable with this game is to learn how they work and invest in them accordingly. Cherry bombs are the distraction item in AC Unity, and when used correctly, they can move any guards wherever you want and make them look wherever you want. Except guards that are programmed to hold a door or checkpoint, they'll just stay there no matter what. There are guards in almost every single mission in this game, which means cherry bombs can always be used. A lot of us used to think cherry bombs were useless because the way they work is very silly. Similar to the comparison between rifles and pistols, you expect them to work one way, but they actually work in the opposite counterintuitive way. They're an audio distraction that guards hear with their ears when they hit a surface. However, for whatever reason, if the guard has no line of sight between himself and the cherry bomb, he won't investigate. He won't even turn to look at it or hear it at all, even though it's very loud. This is what people need to wrap their heads around. It's a sound-based item that actually needs a visual check to work. Once you just accept this stupid rule, you can use cherry bombs to lure individual or multiple guards wherever you want, and since any furniture or walls between a guard and the cherry will prevent them from investigating it, you can use them to be very specific with who you want to move. They're one half of the two huge AI manipulation techniques we have in this game, the other one being visual lure, also known as SSI trick, where you let a guard look at you until his meter flows over to red, then immediately hide to make him come to where you just were. Once you learn both cherry bombs and visual lures, you will have almost complete control of where guards will be, which means you can begin creating setups for sneaking past them or killing them. The Phantom Blade is your official stealth projectile. You can raise its damage by equipping better weapons, higher star rating gear, and even getting the improved Phantom Blade passive skill, even though it doesn't say that it upgrades its quickshot damage. It does. What makes Phantom Blades great is that if you aim manually at someone's head, the damage they do doesn't really matter, since headshots bypass damage checks and kill the guard directly. Phantom Blades typically do much more damage than even the highest rarity guns do, so they're a great way to quickly close gunners inside buildings without making noise, a great way to kill low-ranking guards with a body shot without having to stop moving, and a great way to kill paired enemies using a 1-2, which is a stealth game technique where you headshot one enemy, then immediately do a takedown animation on the closer one for a manual double kill. Unity is a game that populates its spaces with very high guard density compared to a lot of other mainstream stealth games, so being able to kill quickly, efficiently, and often from a distance is extremely important. Phantom Blades are a weapon that does a lot of damage, that can be lethal without making a sound, and in a pinch you can even fire them at floors in order to make guards look at them, since the noise they make travels a shorter distance than a cherry bomb. Again, since there are guards in almost every area, Phantom Blades are always useful in some way. S-tier items are above and beyond all the others. They have incredible synergy with each other, and since they either have no weakness or their weakness is small compared to how incredible they are, it would be foolish not to use them. These items are so helpful and so strong that a new struggling player who starts using them correctly always notices a massive difference in their skill immediately, a massive difference in their comfort, and how enjoyable and easy Unity becomes to play. These items are the key to people feeling like they can play with real strategy and intention, and they're the first thing to try if you're wondering how to make this game feel a lot better. These items are even so good that you can finish a janky, buggy, and very punishing game with only level 1 weapons and armor, no new gear, never upgrading anything, never buying any skills or passives, and staying as weak and underpowered as possible the entire time, right until you bury your knife in the final boss. They are that good. They're the most expensive and the least expensive. They're yin and yang, alpha and omega. They're your beginning and your enemy's end. The Berserk Blade is the most expensive item in Unity, coming in at $250 for each one, and yet it's so useful that its cost can't bring it down a single tier. At first glance, the Berserk Blade seems simple, and even bad, since Unity is a stealth-based game and Berserk Blade's function looks like it messes with that. Even more, it's the slowest item to use in the entire game, so why is it an S tier? Well, there's a way the game wants you to use it, which will give you the wrong idea, and the secret way good players actually use it, which are two very different beasts that I'll talk about now. The official function of the Berserk Blade is to drive an enemy mad, which causes him to fight others around him and draws other guards in to attack him until he dies. Then they return to their patrol routes. You may realize this is the same behavior that happens when guards have detected you. That's exactly what you're doing. You're flagging one guard to be treated as an enemy, so the others detect him and come to kill him. If you want to use this for a long distraction or to get a lot of kills with, it's best to use it on someone like a spearman or an agile, a unit that can withstand punishment and do a lot of damage before being stopped. And sure, that can be nice. It's a way to pull people from one part of an area to another, but it has a lot of issues. You have no clue how long the fight will last. You don't know whether the guards will get lucky, maybe try to shoot the Berserk one, or not. You don't know how many the Berserk one will kill before he dies. You don't know from how far away other guards will be pulled. You don't know what paths they're going to take back to their normal patrols, and during all of that you might be seen, since during combat their AI is much more sensitive, and the slightest mistake will make them detect you. Sounds like the worst item in the game, so what's the secret? So when a guard first gets shot with a Berserk Blade, for several seconds there's nothing. He takes no actions, and other guards don't hear it. He can't see anything, he can't move. All he can do is this animation. It's only after a short while that he wakes up again and finally begins looking for someone to fight. Several seconds is a long time. An assassin can do a lot of things in several seconds. What if there's a guard detecting you who you didn't realize was there? What if you're down a long hallway and there's nowhere to hide? There's not enough time to aim a headshot. Maybe you can hit him with a Phantom Blade quickshot, but what if he has a lot of health? You don't necessarily know that. What if he lives through it and now you're detected? In late game, this is going to happen a lot more than you think. Berserk Blades are S tier because they delete that risk. It doesn't make any noise, it shoots in a completely straight line, it hits him faster and more reliably than any bomb you could throw. During the long several seconds of complete stun, you run right up to him and stealth kill him while he's blind. None of the other guards have any idea what you just did. If he's too far away to reach, hit him with a second Berserk Blade. He'll overdose, dying totally silently. Yes, it's more expensive than confirming with a melee stab, but 500 is nothing compared to staying unseen and saving tons of other resources. This is the true use of Berserk Blades in Unity, and it's why despite their high cost, it's always worth having them in the situations they're good in. They let you save yourself from being seen by a single guard, they let you be aggressive and lock down that guard to run up to them and stab them, and if you don't need to be in a part of the map for a while, you can still use them in a normal way. This item is great because it makes stealth so much faster and more consistent. The only way it could be any better is if it was somehow cheaper and it let us bypass or kill entire groups of guards instead of just one. Well, there is an item that lets us do that, and it's the strongest one in the entire game. Smoke bombs are so insane that if Unity was a polished, reliable game, they would actually be straight up broken. They work a little differently than players will be used to from previous AC games, but rest assured this is intentional. Even their database tutorial actually says this is how they're supposed to be used. They work like smoke grenades in other stealth games you might have played. They cloud an area and you can run through or inside of it without being detectable. You can kill into the cloud, you can move through the cloud to get to places without being seen, you can use it to stun people, and you can even use it in combat to disable guards and get free melee hits on them that they can't block. Smoke bombs are the cheapest item in the game, not just in terms of strategy, but in terms of cost. So even if the way you play Arno makes you completely destitute, you'll always have the money to buy at least a few, just by looting a few dead enemies. They're so cheap that playing the main story only, you'll always be able to have a complete refill of them. Smoke does for groups what Berserk Blades do for single guards, but Smoke requires a longer range and a faster reaction time, since you have to aim them manually. They're best used from a hidden position that lets you run forward and kill into the cloud, so that by the time the smoke clears away, you're already gone. These are confidently, far and away, the best item in the entire game, and you should be abusing them whenever you need to. Their one downside is that they do make noise when hitting a surface, so nearby guards that you haven't stunned with one will stare at the cloud until it clears away. In situations you don't want that to happen, use a stun bomb instead. Before I go on, I'll briefly touch on one reason why Smoke and Berserk are so strong, because there's something unique to AC Unity that makes them even better than they would be normally, like in Syndicate for example. This game has 2 slots for equipped or active items that Arno can hold at the same time. One slot is for a projectile and one is for a grenade type. This matches up perfectly with Berserk Blades and Smoke Bombs each taking up 1. This means that if you want to have both selected at the same time, and you often will, you can, and it significantly reduces the APM needed to react quickly to all kinds of situations. This is useful for any player no matter what platform you're on, no matter if you use a controller or if you play on a keyboard. Being able to immediately use either of the items without the extra step of going through your inventory may be the difference between a smooth recovery or a sloppy fight. That's why, when they're streaming or even in their normal videos, you'll see a lot of really good Unity players always return to Smoke and Berserk, reselecting them when they're just running around. It lets us react to anything, since it's a very safe tool selection, and it's a great response to any situation. I hope you enjoyed this video. I enjoyed making it and talking about these items. Let me know if you want to see more discussion content on Assassin's Creed Unity. Thank you for watching, may the night keep you safe, and I'll see you all next time.